GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
From wherever we decide studios, broadcasted live on iTunes, Spreaker, and worldwide, this is the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast with your host, the producer, Pat G. The G stands for gangsta. And now kick back and get ready for the eargasms.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, to a special edition of the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast here on Twitch. Of course, you can check us out on everywhere you can find your fine-ass podcasts under Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast. Myself, Pat G, along with Dan Fury, checking out the Twitch stream here because we bring you something special. As you can see, my background, NWO. I'm rocking the special edition IndyCar Mafia NWO shirt from a in your house or in your face wrestling event a few years ago where they tangled with Kevin Nash and Scott Norton. And
some other guys. Who cares about them?
Other people. Whatnot.
Yeah, screw those jobbers.
But we are here to bring you the live watch of the 1996 main event of Bash at the Beach. This was a historical moment in pro wrestling. It was where Hulk Hogan turned heel. Plain and simple. Like, no one had ever seen it before. Nobody ever expected it to happen. There was, leading into this event, you had seen the appearances of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on WCW Monday Nitro programming, which led a lot of people to believe that WWF at the time was truly starting a war, because that initial promo from Scott Hall in May of 96 was like, you want a war, we'll give you a war. And then they brought in Kevin Nash, and then of course this led to the events of Bash at the Beach 96 with Hulk Hogan being the mysterious third man. And of course like Tommy Jump Boost Gaming in the chat has said, Hogan wasn't the first option. The first option was Sting, because at that time, Eric Bischoff, who was the executive vice president of WCW, felt like it had to be somebody that was WCW born and bred to lead this thing. And that's because Hogan didn't want to turn heel. Hogan felt like he still had plenty of gas in the red and yellow run. And he didn't. The fans had turned on him. There were more boos than there were cheers for the red and yellow.
And, I think a lot of people, first off, 25 years almost to the day. Yesterday was the exact 25th anniversary. We are doing this tonight, the day after, which even then was a monumental night because it was the first time after Hulk Hogan had turned heel, the NWO shows up, and you have, this now power struggle, which was forming in WCW. This was a much talked about event because, you had laid out. The Monday Night War had started less than a year prior.
Yep.
The two big stars of the new generation, Kevin Nash, Diesel, and Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, jumped ship. And unceremoniously at the time, wrestlers would go between different promotions. And, the the magazines would talk about it, this was really the beginning of the internet buzz with professional wrestling. And, Hulk Hogan was asked if he would turn heel, maybe not specifically for this. And in Eric Bischoff's book and even Hulk Hogan's book and in Nitro, they talked about Hulk Hogan listened to the pitch and said, "Brother, until you've walked a day in my red and yellow boots, you'll never understand." And he kicked Eric Bischoff out of his house.
Yeah.
And then
what's funny is there was talks about Hogan turning heel way earlier than this. There was talks about Hogan turning heel when he was going up against the Dungeon of Doom, and you seen Hogan wearing the all black. Like, he wasn't the red and yellow. He was wearing the all black gear. There was talks then, and then the pitch was made, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you turned heel? And Hogan's like you said, until you walked a mile in them red and yellow colors and them yellow boots, you wouldn't understand. And the thing is it was such a momentous thing with Scott Hall, Kevin Nash coming over to WCW, and then of course the behind the scenes aspects, because for that first couple of months they weren't letting them use their names. So WWF kind of was like, hey, you're giving the fans the illusion that this is Razor Ramon, this is Diesel, like and that it led to a lawsuit, and that's where it led to, I believe it was the Great American Bash, which was June. That's when they started using Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and that's when Eric Bischoff took the power bomb through the table.
It was through the stage. It was off of the stage, which at that point in WCW, this is one of the things fans knew, like super fans knew that Eric Bischoff was the man behind the curtain. They knew that he had taken over as executive vice president a few years previous, but no one had ever put hands on Eric Bischoff.
Yep.
So when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash assaulted him at the Great American Bash, powerbombed him off the stage, that was signifying to fans that this is going to be a different turn in professional wrestling. And I will dare say, before we get this all kicking and we're watching this, the NWO, the concept of the NWO and the execution of the NWO for the first, I'm going to go with year and a half, probably up until Starrcade 97. They are, to date, in my opinion, the greatest wrestling faction of all time. And the reason I say that is they changed everything after that. We had Austin 316 happened in June, which was kind of like a turn for the Attitude Era for WWF. But really, if the NWO didn't strike when they did, as far as ratings, merchandise sales, the level of talent, the storylines that were being told, and the Monday Night War itself, I don't think professional wrestling would be where it's at today. And all of this stemmed off of the concept of taking Hulk Hogan, the greatest babyface professional wrestling had had up to that point, arguably some of the best merchandise sales, the best pay-per-view sales, WrestleMania attendance records, for God's sakes, you had the Silver Dome. Even Hogan in WCW, from the time he came in 93 up until maybe late 94, early 95-ish, and leading into 96, had been giving WCW high drawing numbers with their pay-per-views and events. All of WCW's highest rated pay-per-views, to put this into perspective, during the Hulk Hogan era, if you will, 93 on, all had Hulk Hogan in the main event.
Yep. Hogan was the guy. But I digress. We are going to jump into it. You won't get the introductions. We're just going to jump right into the match here. Starting off right now, as you can see, just popping up screen. Now listen, I understand that you have you have copyrights and everything, and of course I had to rip the video. I had to get the video and everything. But you know what? We can do it. I found a way to do it. I looked up the legalities. I covered my bases. So here we are. Starting off the match, you have Lex Luger, Scott Hall, and in the outside, and they're known as the Outsiders. They was in the NWO at this time. They were just the Outsiders, and there was the constant talk about who's the third man, because look at the talent that's on the other side of the ring. You have Lex Luger, you have Sting, and you have Randy Savage. That's a lot of talent in the ring right there.
Yeah, every single person on the WCW team was a champion either in WWF or NWA WCW. And here is where things get interesting, because with this decision, Stinger Splash onto Kevin Nash, they take Lex Luger out, which essentially took the 3-on-3 match and breaks it into a tag team match, which showed that we could level things up. Because if you look at the other side of the level up at this point, you have Macho Man Randy Savage, who was just under popularity of Hulk Hogan during the 80s boom in wrestling.
Yep.
Okay. And always in his WWF run was just razor thin underneath Hogan. And Sting, who was the franchise of WCW. And in my opinion, the face of WCW, the organization from birth to death.
Oh, absolutely.
And by doing this, you make it a tag match, but there's still that air of the third man.
Yeah, and this was the thing, is you gotta also look at this as, yes, the Lex Luger got taken out, and it basically turned it into a tag match at that point. And like you said, you still had the air of the third man. But the thing is it was funny that Luger got taken out, because you have Randy Savage, who was the WWF guy for the longest time, came over shortly after Hulk Hogan had made his jump to WCW. You have Sting, who's the face of WCW, had never left WCW from the time that he got into what was WCW, known as NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, and all that time. So Sting at that point was your Undertaker of WCW. He's the guy that never left at any point in time. Savage, of course, Luger was with NWA, Jim Crockett, transferred over to WWF as the narcissist, and then, of course, Vince McMahon tried to put him in that same limelight as his next Hulk Hogan, with the red, white, and blue, the Lex Express, the body slam of Yokozuna. It just never caught fire like it should have.
No, it shouldn't. And then, of course, the first Nitro at the Mall of America, the big surprise, Lex Luger walking out because he was not under contract.
He was on a verbal agreement, which Jim Ross has gone on immensely at times and going, we got screwed. At that time, Jim Ross was still in the process of your word is your bond. We have a handshake and your word that we have a deal. And the thing is what's funny with Lex Luger showing up on that Nitro is Eric Bischoff threw like a lowball number to him. He's like, I threw him like 2 years at like $125,000 or something like that, and Luger took it.
Let's talk about something real quick. Scott Hall is on point in this match.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, like, this is Scott Hall at his finest. I'd like to say, like, May 96 to, 98, beginning of 98 is the best Scott Hall stuff, because he was just able to make some of those WCW guys look amazing. And, you have Macho Man and Scott Hall are in the ring right now. And you hated Scott Hall if you were a WCW diehard fan.
Yep.
Because for some of those fans, it's like, first off, they remember him as the Diamond Stud, but also, he was Razor Ramon. He was a WWF guy. Like, there really was this perception with some fans where it's like, are you WWF or are you WCW? And the competition's wrestling sucks.
Yep, absolutely. Because at that time, you got to look at what was going on. Vince McMahon and WWF at that time were still reeling from the losses of Hogan, Savage, and that. And then they were building this new class, this new generation. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin. And you had you also had the two big guys in Diesel and Razor Ramon. And then it was just Razor, Scott Hall has said it in interviews. He's like, I kind of got to a point where I plateaued and I wanted to try to make more money because my family. And Kevin Nash was the same way. He's like, Kevin Nash had just had a kid, I believe late 95, early 96.
Yep, his wife was pregnant when he had signed his contract, or the legal note, saying that he was going to WCW, because even Scott Hall and Kevin Nash didn't sign hard copies of their contract until the office believed that the fake Razor and the fake Diesel was actually them. Yeah. And that they had shown up in the locker room to just cause trouble.
And they ended up throwing more money at them because the WCW front office got worried.
Yep.
Both of them have said they're like, listen, we're just going to add more money just to make sure. And the thing, what was funny is when Kevin Nash got the deal to go to WCW, he went to Vince first and was like, all you have to do is match this and I'll stay. And Vince at the time couldn't. He's like, I couldn't match it because you got to remember at that night in 96, Vince McMahon was still under a 20-year contract with Bret Hart. Mm-hmm. He had just handed what was rumored and reported as a 20-year contract to Mark Henry. And then, of course, you had bigger contracts with Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart and British Bulldog and everything. But this is the thing, and very similar to like what you said about Scott Hall. Some of Kevin Nash's best stuff was during this time period as well.
Yeah, every person in this match leveled up after the NWO. First off, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash being able to go out and be the outsiders were one of the best tag teams in wrestling ever. The outsiders were. Macho Man eventually became Macho Madness, NWO Macho Man. Yep. And then Hulk Hogan, without a shadow of a doubt, going from the babyface that was really started in AWA, went to WWF, created the Rock and Wrestling Connection in the big 80s boom. And then with this reinvention of his character and going heel for the first time in over 10 years that real fans will remember, was huge. And then, of course, Sting. It wasn't but a couple months after this where Sting completely changed his character to become the Crow Sting that we have today. Like 25 years later, Crow Sting is still the preferred Sting of an entire generation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things of WCW was floundering, and I believe that the occurrence of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash coming in helped them so much.
It gave them a shot of, this is gonna be weird when you think about it now. The age of these guys then is like the age of when AJ Styles showed up at the Royal Rumble. Like, these guys were experienced wrestlers that had a fan base already built in. Yep. That could work their asses off. And fans, once again, I have to mention, this is 96. This is when the internet buzzed. The dirt sheets were no longer printed. They were available, up to the minute information, AOL, chats and all that other stuff. You had this dawning of a new age, and those two guys took full advantage of it. WCW was given essentially, here's your budget. Bischoff played it well. We learned about that in Nitro, the book. And he was able to get these contracts for these guys. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash had two of the best contracts in pro wrestling history, period. Done. And because of them, you now have wrestlers today are able to enjoy relaxed schedules with very good pay. And that is because they took a pre-existing notion in WCW, guaranteed contracts. They were there before Bischoff showed up.
Yep.
And just took advantage of it and showed guys like, this is a business, make money, go home to your wife.
Yeah. And what's funny is, yes, that a lot of Eric Bischoff has said that he's taken a lot of flack for guaranteed contracts and everything, but you got to remember, guaranteed contracts were in pro wrestling long before Eric Bischoff took over WCW. He's like, there were guaranteed contracts in the AWA.
He had a guaranteed contract as a D-string announcer for WCW.
Yep.
Like, he came in and knew, I work these days, I make X amount of money. If I don't work those days, I make X amount of money. Okay. A lot of these guys were able to take an extreme advantage off of something that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash just happened to point out to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's
Can you
funny,
hate them for it? No.
No. And what's funny about this match, when Lex Luger got taken out early in the match, and I remember it, is like, I remember watching this pay-per-view with a couple of my friends, and people brought up the point, they're like, why'd Luger get taken out so early? And people started to think that Lex Luger was going to be the third man. Like, Luger was going to come back out and turn, and I'm going, I don't know about that.
The thing about doing this on Twitch, and I hope that everyone watching is able to go back and watch this match with audio commentary, with their commentary.
Yeah.
Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Dusty Rhodes need to get credit in this match just as much as the performers. And the reason I say that is Bobby the Brain Heenan, Dusty Rhodes, and Macho Man with a chair, and Tony Schiavone throughout this entire pay-per-view and this entire match built up suspense.
Oh, absolutely.
They made you question everything. Bobby Heenan was questioning, is Dusty Rhodes part of this? There was this entire paranoia.
Like, no one knew. And the thing is everybody was a suspect. Everybody was a suspect. And the thing is what's funny is now you have, and I know WWE has gotten away from it with the three-man boots. The fact that WCW was able to pull off three-man boots on these pay-per-views with Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Dusty Rhodes, or Bobby Heenan, Mike Tenay, and Tony Schiavone. Like, the fact that they were able to pull off these three-man boots and everything just flowed, and also the thing is to this day, I will say this, Tony Schiavone, it will go down as a top 3 play-by-play announcer in pro wrestling.
Hooking both legs, Kevin Nash was. This team right here, as much as people talk about JR and the King, Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan were a great team on audio on the commentary booth, because even though Bobby the Brain Heenan was technically your heel color commentator, when it came to the NWO, oh hell no, Bobby Heenan wanted the NWO dead. Like Bobby Heenan wanted the NWO buried. He wanted Hulk Hogan's teeth knocked down his throat.
And
months later, when Roddy Piper would show up to challenge Hulk Hogan, he was so happy the guy in the skirt was coming to fight Hogan.
Yeah,
you know?
and this is the thing is you got to remember, Bobby Heenan had this long feud with Hulk Hogan for the longest time. He had always been like, no, Hogan, you got to watch Hogan's true colors. And this is the thing is if you really watch Hogan's in-ring career, yes, he was the super over babyface, but a lot of the things that he did in the ring were very heelish. Also, Freshly Squeezed 91, thank you for the follow, jumping in. If you just joined the channel, thank you for tuning in, my friend. Thank you for dropping the follow. Let me know where you found us, how you found us. Hope your Thursday is treating you well. Oh, okay. And that, but yeah, there it is.
Yep, here it comes. Here it comes.
The low blow, and here comes Hogan.
But whose side is he on?
Yeah.
But what are you talking about? Whose side is he on?
Oh, there it is. Kevin Nash got hauled, bailed. Oh, there's a and there's the leg drop. And he didn't do it once. He did it twice.
Yes. And the pause.
Yep. The pause and then the pause, the celebration, and then
the thumbs up.
And this was the funny thing with this match is you have Hogan come in, drop the leg on Savage, and that was pretty, and it was just like at that point it was over. At that point it was over. You know who the third man was, and there was no official end to the match. It just this is where the shock was. It was just complete and utter shock and awe. Like
the heels counting their own pin. Yep. 1, 2, 3, and it wasn't a fast count. It was a legit count. But this match was not the greatest match.
Oh, okay? No, not at all.
No, it wasn't a great match. But what you remember is the most important part, and it's the last 5.5 minutes.
Yep, it's the last 5.5 minutes of the match, and then it's the post-match interview with Gene Okerlund that really
and it had to be
sold
Gene.
It. Yeah, had it been anybody else, I don't think it would have had the same effect. It had to be Okerlund. It had to be Okerlund doing the post-match interview because of the long history that Hogan had with Okerlund.
Sting picking up the pieces of Macho Man.
Yep. The rough grabbing Macho Man, and then just the utter shock and awe in the crowd in this event. It was the garbage and the everything being thrown in the ring, and just Gene Okerlund has said that like he got hit in the head with a battery.
Yep. Look at fans didn't do this back in those days.
Nope.
Like there was this shit being thrown in the ring. You'd hear Steve Austin talk about it in Dallas. You'd hear all of these guys, these legends talk about in the territory days, people throwing stuff in the ring and all that other, garbage. But it's like, dude, you didn't see that in the sleek produced television. And this is the first time, I can remember watching it being like, oh, fans are throwing stuff at these guys.
Yeah.
What?
And the thing is for those tuning in and watching, go back and listen to the audio of this entire match, like we've talked about the commentary, but then listen to the promo that Hogan cut. This was one of the best promos that Hulk Hogan had cut in a good number of years.
Because this was when promos started to become like good, because we talked about this a month prior was Austin 316.
Yep.
This is just as iconic because it's like, the first thing you have to realize, brother, this is the future of wrestling. You could call this the new world order of wrestling, brother. It's like people clicked. The moment those words came out, it was like, boom. All right, we're good.
Absolutely. It was, and then on top of it, it was the fact that you had the two guys that came in from WWF, and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and then you had the guy that built the WWF, and now he had come to WCW, real American made and all this, and now all of a sudden, because the fans had quote unquote turned on him and everything, he's now showing his true colors. And what made this great is the reaction of Bobby Heenan. And you brought it up, is whose side is he on? Bobby Heenan, like I said, Bobby Heenan for the longest time was like, these are not Hogan's true colors. I know Hogan's true colors. And then when Hogan went from the red and yellow to the black and white, and he envisioned the Hollywood Hogan persona, Bobby Heenan was like, yo, this man needs to go.
Yeah, at that point, that is when Bobby Heenan was getting behind anyone and everyone, like the Four Horsemen, the Giant, Lex Luger, Diamond Dallas Page, Sting. Like, you had a guy who had tried to orchestrate attacks on these guys, all of a sudden being like, nah, send everyone out there, empty the locker room, go kick his ass. And it was real, and you felt that. And there was a part of me that honestly thought in my mind,
oh, absolutely,
Hulk Hogan is being real honest right now about how this has got to bug the shit out of him all the time. Like, having to be trained, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, to fans that months earlier were booing him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is what's funny about this, and like you said, the match wasn't the great, but it's the last 5 minutes and it's the promo. And the thing is 25 years later, you see this was the moment that really, and I know a lot of people with the Monday Night War, was the Mall America Lex Luger showing up. That was the moment the Monday Night War started. Or Scott Hall showing up on Monday Nitro. To me personally, this moment right here, when Hogan turned heel for the first time ever, this was the true moment that had started the Monday Night War. Because this was, hey, WWF, we did something that you never had the balls to do.
Yep. We turned Hulk Hogan and like his face, and you watch this promo and his body language and the way he's speaking and just all of it. And the thing that, I'm getting goose pimples. I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. When at the very end of the pay-per-view, the last words you hear, Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell. And it's Tony Schiavone, because he spoke for the fans. Yep. I mean, look at all that shit in the ring, dude.
Yeah, like the amount of garbage and everything, and just in the ring, it's crazy. Like, it's legitimately crazy and everything. So, but yeah, like you said, it was the moment that ended. The moment that ended, and is when that pay-per-view ended. And Tony Schiavone said, Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell. That was the main selling point. That was the hook. That was the hook that was like, you just finished watching 1996 Bash at the Beach. You're like in complete awe, especially fans that were Hulk Hogan fans, were like, they were besides themselves. They're like, how could their hero do this to them? And Tony Schiavone line with that's what really set it in for a lot of people. And then what set it in even more is the next night on Nitro, the red and yellow was dead, the black and white was born.
Yeah, and you had this faction that showed up wherever they wanted, did whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted.
Yep.
And, I know the NWO, it's been 25 years, and there's a lot of people that talk about, oh my God, NWO, the original version, NWO Wolfpack, NWO Hollywood, the D Squad, the LWO, NWO 2000, WWE NWO. Like, people tend to like be a little like snarky about the NWO.
Yep.
To me, the NWO for that first year, and really the first couple months, because we didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, was this real? Like,
yeah,
we were living in Bizarro world. I think that's the best iteration of the NWO. And it's based solely on the fact that Hulk Hogan held on to that belt for almost a year and a half with only 1 week interruption in August of 97.
Yeah.
When Luger won the title.
Yep.
For the lead up
Road
to,
Wild.
Yeah, for the lead up to Road Wild, because Hogan needed to win the belt back. To me, man, 25 years, dude.
Yep.
Like,
yeah. Dude, it's crazy. And then on top of it, 1996 was a big year history-wise for wrestling. But we're going to get into more of that after the break. We are going to be joined by a very special guest, fellow streamer here on Twitch, Slowpoke Felitos. He's going to be joining us for our segment of From the Stands, talking about the NWO and some other topics regarding. We will be right back.
is it funny that I
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, a special Twitch edition. I am Pat G. That's Dan Fury. And we are now joined by our special guest for our segment From the Stands, a fellow Twitch streamer, Slowpoke Felitos. Introduce yourselves to the Turnbuckle Talk world, and
Thank
the
you.
floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everybody. Hold your applauses. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Slowpoke Felitos. Oh, there you go. Ah. Oh, no, I think that kid's dying. Hey, pick him up. Give him CPR. Oh, shit. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Slowpoke Felitos. I'm a part-time streamer, part-time alcoholic, a seasonal Catholic, and a official Lego Builder license holder. Also, a wrestling enthusiast. So, here with Patrick and Daddy, thank you so much for allowing me to be here, a part of the show. Nice work on the NWO section, by the way. That was really phenomenal. 25 years. I cannot believe it, man.
Yeah, 25 years. It's been crazy. Now, getting into, of course, talking about this is...
Sure.
Will we ever see a moment like that again in pro wrestling? Because here we are 25 years from that moment.
Right.
Do you think that we've seen moments like that, or we are going to see a moment like that again?
It's going to be kind of hard to tell, only because we're barely, let's say, for example, if you want to take AEW for what it is right now, it's barely growing. It is barely a almost 3-year company now. For example, if you really want to put them right next to WWE, WWE has a long tenure of like having back and forth stuff like over the years and stuff like that, able to grow. It had competitions like WCW, as we saw a bit ago, and TNA, Impact, whatever you want to call them, GFW. I don't know. It's something a little out there it's questionable. But as in something like a faction like the NWO, like something like that coming up here in the future, I highly doubt it. It doesn't have the same momentum or the same atmosphere as it was before. That edginess that the NWO had back then, being able to get away with stuff, and it's a whole other different pedestal. So I don't think personally. Do you guys have a say in this?
So the thing that made the NWO work, in my opinion, was it was perfect timing, and we had discussed that the Monday Night War was barely a full year in. I think it was 9 months in. You could have knocked your old lady up at the beginning of September and you would have had an NWO baby by 7/7. And the thought that I'm having with that entire idea is Hogan was really the factor that made the NWO work. If they were to try and do anything organic like the NWO, you would need to take someone on the level of Hulk Hogan to do it. And in the modern era of professional wrestling, there's only 2 names that come to my mind: John Cena and The Rock. You would have to have either John Cena or The Rock show up on AEW television, and you would have to, because it had to be the competition, really. It had to be the competition. And they would have to just go straight for the throat of the fans like Hulk Hogan did. You'd have to have John Cena come out and be like, yeah, 5 moves, John, right? 5 moves of doom. Yeah, well, your guys can do flippy dippy stuff all day long and not get a pop. I can walk out and brush my shoulder and all of you are screaming my name. It'd have to be something cocky like that. Do I see John Cena going heel? Sure, maybe. I don't see it having the impact if it isn't organic or it isn't shocking. Him coming back and beating up Drew McIntyre or Roman Reigns and forming a group wouldn't have the same feeling if John Cena, John Moxley, and Malachi Black formed a 3-man group in AEW. That's just, or, New Japan. If John Cena showed up in New Japan and beat up Okada, that could be possibly the closest thing. And him and a couple of guys over there. It's so hard because the NWO was an organic thing. It just unfolded week by week. I mean, what say you, Pat?
I don't think that you'll ever see a moment like that again. And like you said, the thing closest to it would probably be John Cena showing up on AEW television and just unloading on the fans and the guys and everything, because that's what Hogan did. And the thing is you're not going to see that moment because of two reasons. Why? One, because outside of John Cena, there's no one that right now can go into pro wrestling and have the same impact that Hulk Hogan did back in the 80s and 90s. Like, build-wise, money-wise, draw-wise, and everything. John Cena is the closest thing you have. The Rock probably is second, but The Rock has been so far out of wrestling, it wouldn't be as impactful. Had Rock gone and done like some Hollywood movies and kind of built his name up and everything, maybe yes. But John Cena is probably the closest you're going to get to that. The second reason is the internet and social media. Pro wrestling today is, and as we've said it plenty of times, Dan, kayfabe is dead. Pro wrestling, there is nothing hidden anymore. It is very rare that you actually can get a generalized real reaction from a crowd anymore. And
if I may piggyback off that, last night was a prime example of that, because an hour after Malachi Black showed up and kicked people in the face, you had the explanation for why his 90-day no-compete clause. Within an hour, we all knew, they didn't switch him over when he went from NXT to WWE. And you're like, an hour? Like, you didn't even let that simmer. Like, let it simmer, guys. No, we're just going to, okay, fine. We're cool. Carry on. I'm with you.
That's the thing. Like, we live in an era where, yes, okay, and I'm gonna say this for a lot of people. I have a quote unquote unrealistic beef with a lot of content creators from TikTok that claim they're wrestling fans and everything because of the stuff that they say and the nonsense of their opinions. And they bring up the fact that people are like, oh, you like that fake stuff. Okay, to be honest, coming from a man that spent 10 years in the industry with pro wrestling, doing independent shows, as well as my co-hosts, trust me, stuff's not fake, all right? It's true athleticism. The pain is real. The grind is real. The fact that these guys, whether they wrestle for WWE, AEW, TNA, ROH, New Japan, the grind is real. They're on the road 200-something plus days a year. They're taking 20-something bumps a night, whatever may be the case. Okay, there's other people that are these content creators that go on the internet wrestling community. Half of these people you could look at and go, y'all never took a bump in your life, so don't act like you know what it's regarding. And the thing is like Slowpoke, he's a wrestling enthusiast. He lives out in California. I'm sure there's a lot of things going on in California that don't happen here on the East Coast in New York, Ohio, PA, especially independent wise because of the athletic commissions and rules and regulations and everything.
Right. And there's a lot of stuff where fun fact, I ended up going over to Salinas Pro Wrestling down in Los Angeles. I was actually training pre-COVID to be a referee. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tell, like, the as you mentioned, the bumps, they're real. The acrobatics, the athleticism, it's all real. The fact that people can just nitpick, like, oh, it's fake, it's choreographed. And it's like, yeah, you can nitpick all that, but at the end of the day, these are real people. They're taking these bumps, and that's not even guaranteed money at all either. The fact that being able to be honored to watch shows like PWG. I watched the Young Bucks before they ended up going once they left TNA, they were actually going back to doing some shows in TWG. I got to meet Nick and Matt Jackson, stuff like that, and just having the personal connections with people about like saying they're not guaranteed money. It's not always like, sunshine and rainbows down the road. These are tough times where you have to actually go over to maybe meals. The three meals that they eat per day might end up being just gas meal foods. It's tough. And you guys being in the business for what, 10 years, you mentioned, Patrick? Like, yeah. It's a tough business, man. It's a really tough business. And people can't just really like come on by and like, it's easy to antagonize somebody like us wrestling fans and like saying it's fake and whatnot. But we are here, especially you and your show here, being able to take a stand, almost in a sense, like to give wrestling a little more leverage of athleticism and stuff like that, you know.
And what's funny is, of course, you mentioned the fact that yes, Malachi Black shows up on AEW, kicks fools in the face, and an hour later it's like, hey,
fools in the face. Yeah.
Is Arn Anderson okay? Is he okay? Did somebody check up on Arn?
All I have to say is Arn sold that shit like a champion, because when he got kicked, you see the microphone just go. And I'm like,
and Cody too. He got kicked, and his hands were like just.
like he starts to me with like bink.
Yep.
Yeah, like the sell of Arn and Cody was great. But yeah, the fact that it was an hour after the fact that you had multiple sites going, hey, the reason this happened is because of 30-day complete call. And now, because of that news, there's a lot of people going, okay, out of all the people they released, who else had these 30-day no complete causes? Like, and the thing is, if you look at the list, most of the guys that they released were all on the main roster, so they most likely had the 90 days. Like, Tommy N probably fell through the cracks, and that probably fell through the cracks because you had the change of the guard within the management of WWE, going from Mark Carrano and then bringing in the other Nick Khan, and
the con artist.
The con artist, which is hilariously funny because you have two people with the same last name in like similar positions in two wrestling companies. So
there can be one con. There can be only one con. Hey, but you mentioned too about TikTok and the whole information about the hour, not even letting it sink in.
Yep.
And that's the thing though. We're living in an age where we want stuff just like this. And when TikTok, when like you can just swipe up a couple second video, this and that, we want info right now. We want reasons. Just like if we can grasp our phones and literally type in the information. Why is Malachi Black? It's like you get that in an instant. So that's why a lot of stuff like this with kayfabe. Yeah, I get that.
And what's funny is me and Dan are both 38, and we remember, like, listen, we didn't have this back in the era of the Monday Night Wars. Like, we if we wanted like the insider information, we had to call the 1-800 lines at $1.99 a minute to hear me or Bobby the Brain Heenan be like, blah 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 blah. This man and this man's gonna show up on Monday Nitro.
Wow.
ECW had their
ECW hotline, and which if you remember, which is hilarious because if you go when the WWE Network was up and running and you could watch like the old school pay-per-views and they bring up the hotline, they would cover up the number of like number is no longer in service.
No service, yeah.
And I was like, please, like, I just want, like, I understand, like, we're in a different age because social media and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and everything. Imagine if there was a wrestling hotline with just stuff that somehow was not allowed to be reported, like, through the interwebs.
And this is going to make us sound old. Kids, a 1-900 number was something that you had to get your parents' permission to dial on your phone, and they had a phone was on the wall and it had a long cable, because your mama used to whip your ass with it when you were mouthy. Now, if they had something like that today, would I call it? Hell yeah, I'd call it. I'd call it twice on Sunday, just to hear the nonsensical ramblings of a wrestling manager be like, I'll tell you right now, Macho Man's contract, it ain't good. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, Macho Man's leaving? What?
Or even now, like you of course you still have your wrestling magazines, like you still have WWE magazine, you still have PW, the PW Insider and everything, but they're not what the magazines used to be years ago. Like years ago, the magazines, like in order to find out a lot of the stuff, you had to buy the magazines. You had to have the subscriptions, because the thing is, if you didn't have a subscription, the likeliness of you getting getting that month's edition of that magazine from your local bookstore or convenience store or whatever was very slim to none, because the minute they would come out, they'd be gone. Because
I agree.
The fans like, I need to know.
Yeah, that was me when I would go to my local library. I have beef with them. Actually, they have beef with me because I would never return the magazines. Or the, so let's the less we speak about that, the better. But yes, I would collect all the books because I got late into the internet game. So I would literally have to buy or rent out the books, of like all the historic like wins and losses records and stuff like that in pay-per-view, especially for WWE, because I was a big fan of it growing up.
Yeah.
So you would get like, okay, like say for example in 2004, Eddie beat this so and so for the World Heavyweight title, and it's like stuff like that. It's like it's a lot of stuff like that that's the nostalgia now that we can actually go back and check it out how we used to actually grab our information from reading stuff like that. Now,
or even with when WCW used to run the CompuServe chat rooms with the wrestlers in the backstage.
Oh my God! Yeah. Or one of my favorite things, now that we're mentioning wrestling magazines, is during this time, you would have these fantasy bookings.
Yep.
And they would very poorly Photoshop wrestlers facing off against each other.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I have several. World of Wrestling was one of them. And it was the dream matches that could happen if WWF and WCW ever fought at a pay-per-view. And you had Sting versus The Rock. Like 99 Sting versus 99 Rock. And I'm like, God damn, that's a good one. Like, that would be a good one. And you had, like, Scott Steiner versus Kurt Angle was one. And I'm like, okay, this is some cool stuff. But the magazines used to also, like, feed into the storylines. Like, who's going to be the next member to jump ship from WWF to WCW or vice versa. And that was kind of the way we got our info. And other than the hotlines, because the internet was so new and, people were trying to figure out how to make it work for wrestling. And eventually they did. But like Pat G said, I mean, Zelina Vega, right after, Mr. Black kicked the microphone into the multiverse out of Arn Anderson's hand, her first tweet was, "So proud of you." And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, you just got rehired. Come on. You just got rehired.
Yeah.
She's testing the waters. It's fine.
And what was funny about Zelina is it was 3 months ago that it was like, hey, Zelina Vega's at the Performance Center. And people were like, oh, she's going to get rehired. And the thing is I think what had happened is going back to months back when WWE and the third party, like your Twitch channels and your cameos and everything. I think what happened is the people that got let go and your Mark Carranos and everything, and then they brought in Nick Khan. I think that was the changing of the guard a little bit towards word going, hey, it's now 2021. This is where technology's going. This is what people are doing. And this is how pro wrestlers are building a bigger brand for themselves to get more eyes on the product. But also, this is the basically equivalent of pro wrestlers from, like, say, the 80s and early 90s going into Hollywood and doing TV shows and movies and trying to have a life after wrestling. And this is the thing is we've seen the stories of your Ric Flairs, your Terry Funks, and your Dusty Rhodes and everything, of the struggles that they had, the constant up and down the road, night in, night out, and everything, trying to build for their families, trying to provide a life for their family, and then of course you go into the 80s and 90s, and yes, there was the wrestling booms, Hulk Hogan, the Rock and Wrestling, and everything. But now it's the thing of if you're a pro wrestler nowadays and you're in the WWE and you're not one of the main time big players, yeah, having something to fall back on because we can't all be Apollo Creed and have masters in psychology and everything. You have to have something to fall back on, because there's going to come a day where wrestling's no longer there. And that's how I viewed a lot of the guys doing Twitch and everything, because and then on top of it is, you got to remember, these guys they're real people. They're people that are just like us. They grew up with video games, whether it be PlayStation, Nintendo, Sony, or Xbox, whatever. They're video game lovers. So the fact that you now have something where somebody that you're a big name from independent wrestling who's got hired from the WWE, and you can go in and stream for 2-3 hours and whatever. And yes, you may have to give WWE a cut of it, but at one point or another, you're going to leave WWE. You're not going to you'll have the residual from like merchandise and pay-per-views, whatever it may, but you still need a flow, steady income. That's what I always viewed as the third-party content was. I'm like, listen, they're trying to build themselves something for when they're done with professional wrestling and they're no longer involved in it.
And honestly, you're watching this and we're on Twitch for the special edition, so we're watching wrestlers play a game and just be themselves. And honestly, they pulling back the curtain to show, like, okay, so Tyler Breeze likes playing this game, and he's going to sit there, and then, like, you can ask him a question. If you would have told me in, like, 1994, for example, that, Shawn Michaels is sitting there playing Sonic the Hedgehog, and I could ask him, hey, what's your favorite level on it? He could be like, well, this dude in New York just asked this. Well, this is actually, I like this game, but I prefer Super Mario, blah, blah, blah. It'd be like, oh, shit, he just answered my question.
He's a real person. He's a real
person. I'm going to buy his next T-shirt.
Yeah.
And you have Instagram. It's like, you have wrestlers hawking stuff on Instagram, whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, Finn Balor has his peak gear that he does. Randy Orton has a clothing line. You have these wrestlers that are doing outside of the box money making and loading their name to other products. Honestly, to me, for them to kind of scale back and be like, look, we don't mind the Twitch thing, just don't do anything to make us look bad. I think that's another thing, is that, there is always that concept that you can be canceled for something you say, and something you do, your bosses could be leaned on. And if you say something really horrible or are drunk as shit on a Twitch thing, you could be a dick, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're jobless.
See, and that's the thing too about like keeping, I guess, like people that work for the company that you work for, WWE, TNA, whatever it is, mainly WWE. Now that you're on eggshells, because yes, again, like how you mentioned, you have to watch out what you're saying, because not only is it the company that they're trying to cover their butts over too, they have advertisers. And these advertisers have like the what was it, the Boys and Girls Club, like the foundation, like the Make-A-Wish Foundation. They have those kind of organizations that they have to watch out for. They have people in Saudi Arabia, all these things that are networking, like building networking relationships. If one wrestler in their company were to mess up, say a racial slur or whatever it is, cuss at somebody, being all drunk and stuff like that, that makes them look bad. Say, for example, with one of the Uso brothers, is it Jimmy or Jay? Which one of those two? I think it was Jimmy. Yeah,
it was Jimmy.
Poor Jimmy, man. He needs help, man. And that makes the company look bad, because one, you have little ones that look up to him, and it's just like, wow, like, is it really okay to actually drink and drive, or is it really okay to be this messed up and still be popular? It's setting a bad example. So it's all these things that if you implement that towards a third-party service like Twitch or Cameo or whatnot, it'll make your company look bad. So they have to watch out for that. That's totally understandable why they had to cut down for what they needed to do. For example, Paige, like that was a perfect example, trying to bounce back and forth of whether she's going to keep the channel or she has to cancel it or whatnot. So it's like there's some stuff that you have to really watch out for and look into the company's perspective.
Yeah, and the thing is a lot of at the time when this all happened, a lot of people they separated church and state essentially. Paige changed up her name. Paige changed up her name. Zelina Vega changed up her name. They they distanced themselves from their WWE thing. The thing is where you can only do so much is the thing is like Adam Cole and Tyler Breeze. Like Adam Cole is his legit name. Like that's his legit name. Like you can't really and that. But like Tyler Breeze kind of like changed up his thing and he is using his nickname and everything. Everybody knows Tyler Breeze, but he's separated church and state. The thing is, when Zelina got released last year because of it, I don't think it was so much the Twitch so much. It was the fact that, and people forgot about this little tidbit, is Zelina Vega, Thea Trinidad, had an OnlyFans. Granted, it wasn't anything X-rated or anything. She was on there primarily, maybe some bikini shoots and a lot of cosplay stuff, but there's that image that OnlyFans is adult rated content.
It has that stigma, yes.
It's got that stigma. And what's funny about it is it has that stigma, so being WWE, who is now, unlike 25 years ago, a publicly traded company, they have advertisers, they have sponsors, where if the sponsors don't like something, they're going to threaten to pull their money or rabble, tuss, similar to a couple of years ago when WWE wanted to do the women's battle royal at WrestleMania, and they were going, hey, the Mae Young battle royal, and Snickers was like, wait, hold on a minute, no, there's all these things and bad things, and no, we don't like this.
It was the Fabulous Moolah, battle royal, and this, I can understand the company's standpoint as far as like OnlyFans and stuff like that, because do realize the Generation X was inducted in the Hall of Fame, just not China. And the explanation, the long-standing explanation, the line that we've heard is, if a young girl wants to know who China is and she Googles China, the first thing that's going to pop up is not a WWE archive footage or anything like it. It's going to be porn. So, unfortunately, this is not like it was in the late 90s and early 2000s where Playboy was accepted. I know Candice Michelle had done some Skinamax films.
And the thing is it was and then at that time, like I said, when those things were created, when those deals were made, WWE was private, and it was Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon made the deal with Playboy to have Sable and Sunny and Candice Michelle and China as the focal point. Like, that's the thing. Like, you got to remember, back in that age of the Monday Night Wars, WWE was not public. They were a private company, so they didn't have to. And Eric Bischoff has said said it in multiple interviews, multiple books, and everything. Is WWE was willing to push the envelope a lot further than what WCW could, especially because at that time WCW had the rumors and everything of the AOL merger. So once AOL Time Warner merger happened, then of course you have standards and practices. The minute that WWE went public and started getting advertising dollars from whoever and having sponsors, then you have they've cut back on a lot of stuff. Yes, they have done certain things in the past 15, 20 years that towed that gray area, but didn't blow that gray area out of the water. And case in point, look back in early 2006, 2007, when Michaels and Triple H had reformed DX, and they did like the summer cookout thing. Shawn Michaels is like. And then all of a sudden Triple H is like, yo, yell some wrestler's name or whatever, and Michaels is off screen while Triple H has the innuendo with the sausage and hot dog and everything. Because Shawn Michaels wasn't comfortable with it anymore.
Fuji. And WWE especially like they call it the PG era, modern era, whatever. You're right, it is very hard. Women's sexuality changed because in the late 90s, early 2000s, the less clothes you wore, you had bra and panty matches, you had pudding matches, Mae Young was showing her puppies, sex sold, okay? Now the appeal of the women isn't less clothes, less wrestling, more popularity. It's the woman who can go out there and go and really perform at a top level. That's who people are going to go with. Her sexuality happens to come out in different ways. Like Charlotte Flair did the ESPN nudes thing. It's classy, but sexual.
Right.
But it was about her strength. Asuka, when she was Kana in Japan, she would do these weird videos, but as soon as she came to WWE, she was a machine. She was a monster. She was a destroyer. Right. It's but she still kind of has that geisha vibe that she plays off of, very sensual. It's a different kind of sexuality. I don't need my female wrestlers to be fighting in bras and panties. You can have one of them in a full body jumpsuit pretending to be a superhero going against a girl who's watched too many Insane Clown Posse music videos, and guess what, there's still those dudes in the audience who'll be like, you know what,
there's a fetish for everything he's trying to say.
Exactly.
Listen, rule number 37. If it exists, there's something. There's a fetish for it.
I'm not looking for fiend porn online. Just so we're clear, I'm not looking for fiend porn.
Someone here watching probably is. I'm not going to name any names or point any fingers. Who knows?
What's
Here's
funny
that one
is,
lonely guy.
What's funny is WWE, and it's even the same with AEW and TNA and ROH. Over the past 5-10 years, you have found this balance between strong women and that will give you that can also be proud and completely fine with their sexuality and everything. You found that balance. And like you said, you brought up Charlotte Flair. That was perfect. It's the thing of wrestling has changed so much in the past 25 years that it's now funny that there are people that are wrestling fans that have no idea who the NWO truly is, or what the NWO meant to pro wrestling. And yes, you can go back, you can watch the WCW, and I know WWE is doing NWO week and everything, and they're highlighting a lot of the early NWO stuff, probably that first year and a half up until Starrcade 97, where things started getting out of whack and everything. It's weird because you now have wrestling fans that were born 98, 99, 2000, 2001, and they grew up in this PG era, this modern era, that they see this stuff and they have to ask their parents about it. Their dad or mom may be a wrestling fan and trying to explain it. Why isn't wrestling like this? This is fun. And this is the thing. Times changed. It's 25 years. It's crazy to think of how much wrestling has changed.
I think what you're trying to mention is like how kids say nowadays, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
You have to be in that moment of time and period of when it happened, it happened. It's almost like going and asking somebody, hey, how was Woodstock? Or, hey, how was it like, watching a show at the Beatles and stuff like that? It's like stuff like that. You had to be there to experience and stuff like that. We can only tell these stories, and we can only tell them in however structured you want it and stuff like that. Have people catch the replays and watch it from the beginning to now and stuff like that. It's just a moment in time that, like, how we want to end up going full circle. It's something that may not ever happen again.
No. And, there have been moments in wrestling that will never be duplicated. You can come close. And before Roman Reigns was yeeting Dominic Mysterio into the multiverse, Kevin Nash was lawn darting Rey Mysterio against the side of a production truck. And we were sitting at home being like, did he just fucking kill a man? Like, he just killed him. Like,
yeah.
There's stuff like that,
or random people that live in said neighborhood calling the police because they actually think stuff's legitimately happening and like real, and it's a wrestling show.
Okay, here is one moment that happened that I'm sure you guys will remember. It was before Hulk Hogan came out as the third man. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall come through the crowd with aluminum baseball bats in the middle of a match. The cops storm the ring, and I'll never forget it. This is when I was like, oh shit, like they're not supposed to be here. The one cop actually had his gun and his hand was on his gun. And he's looking at them, and all I'm thinking is, I'm about to watch Diesel get shot on national television. I don't know if my 15-year-old brain can handle this shit. This is what happened. And kids, I don't want to say the internet ruined it for a lot of kids, but, the magic is gone to where I don't know if we could ever have it again. I don't know if we could ever have an NWO again. Right. I mean, case in point was the Shield. When the Shield debuted a few years back, we all knew they were Florida Championship Wrestling, and it was an angle, and we all knew it. As wrestling fans who paid attention that closely to the business. But at the same token, you were like, still not NWO.
No.
Yeah, and
did they ever go to the late night shows? Did they ever promote themselves on TV to other programs like the NWO did? I mean, they had Hogan. They had Hogan going over to what's his name? Jay Leno and stuff like that. Yeah, they had programs like that. They had the Arsenio Hall show and stuff. They had stuff like that where they can go over to public television shows and stuff like that to promote themselves. You didn't see the Shield doing that. I mean, of course, us wrestling fans, we knew it in the lore of FCW, all that kind of stuff. But have they ever for a casual viewer gone to that exposure? I don't think so.
And the thing is,
have you watched the? Go ahead, Pat.
And the thing is Eric Bischoff has mentioned this time and time again, whether interviews, podcast, or whatever.
Yeah.
The purpose of the NWO was to be completely separate from WCW. It was its own company. It was its own brand. So when they would run the commercials, this advertisement has been paid by the NWO.
Yeah.
You don't see stuff like that anymore.
The promos that were cut were legendary. Okay, the way that they sold their T-shirts, I remember Kevin Nash doing an interview and he said we weren't selling NWO shirts with the rest of them. We were selling them out of a van in front of the venue. And we just paid a couple guys that worked in the back of, $50 to go hawk our T-shirts, and we'd leave with $20,000 in our pocket from shirts sold at a van. I mean, This goes to the power of the NWO. Dennis Rodman no-showed practices
During
for the
NBA playoffs.
Finals.
Yeah.
Okay, just to show up on Monday night. And it's like, the funniest part about it is like, so The Last Dance, this is what I was going to mention a few minutes ago. So The Last Dance, one of the final episodes of The Last Dance is talking about that time period, that NBA Finals 98. And it gets to I'm waiting for it. I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is not a documentary.
On the edge of your seat.
Until Dennis Rodman shows up in an NWO shirt. And sure as fuck, here you have the segment where he's beating up Dallas Page with Hulk Hogan with steel chairs. And Phil Jackson's just sitting there. He goes, so yeah, Dennis no-showed and just went to go be a pro wrestler with Hulk Hogan. And then they show Michael Jordan's face, and you just have Michael Jordan being like...
Yep.
And I'm sitting here thinking, and Michael Jordan starts calling him Rodzilla. He's like, come on, Rodzilla, we're skipping practice. And it's like, you're sitting here and you're like, that's the power of this faction. Like, one of the most recognizable sports figures of all time in 97. Mm-hmm. Mind you, Dennis Rodman showed up at the beginning of 97 when the NWO was hot and was just walking out. Because it fit his persona, because he was the bad boy. He was the dude that kicked cameramen in the testicles and married New York City. And his book was a #1 bestseller. It's like Dennis Rodman was gravitating to it, like Wade Boggs, because of Kurt Hennig, gravitated to the NWO.
And then Karl Malone because of Diamond Dallas Page.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the NWO did so much good for WCW, but at the same token, I think it also was a double-edged sword, because the instant popularity of the NWO was great at first, but then, like in the Nitro book, the double-edged sword that came with bumps in money and pay increases, favored nations, wrestlers showing up for part-time schedules, Thunder, the Goldberg push, Finger Poke of Doom, and all of these things, they just happened to bubble to where people loved the NWO, and then all of a sudden it went love, get them off my TV.
Yeah, and it even went as little as, like, when you're actually watching the program for Nitro, the announcers, they're not even talking about the match. It's only talking about, what happened to the NWO, who's going to be joining, who's this and that, and it spoke volumes. It was an entity of its own that really, like, blew up.
Yeah, and then
it got
of course,
too big for them to control.
And then of course you have like, and like we said, that first year and a half leading up to Starrcade 97, you had Hogan, Nash, Hall. DiBiase came in for a hot minute. You had X-Pac come in for a cup of coffee.
2 years.
You had the rookie that Hulk Hogan scouted personally in the Giant, and everything. And then it got to where Hogan started bringing in his buddies, your
cronies,
Bruce Beefcakes as the disciple, and then
Brian Adams,
Macho Man Randy Savage,
Disco
Scott
Inferno,
Norton, Disco Inferno, Stevie Ray. But I will say this: it helped Buff Bagwell. Buff Bagwell joined.
God damn it! Yes,
it helped Buff Bagwell.
Absolutely.
The NWO was a negative for a lot of people, but the NWO was a positive for a few people. Case in point, Buff Bagwell and Scott Steiner.
Yes, yeah, I was going to say Scott Steiner.
Mm-hmm.
You had Scott, Alexander. Oh, let's see. Buff Bagwell became Buff Bagwell.
Yeah.
Conan. K-Dog.
Yep.
Okay. K-Dog came up and was just one of the luchadors, and then all of a sudden throw an NWO T-shirt on him.
Because for the longest time, Buff Bagwell, Bagwell was Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and he was the clean babyface tag team wrestler.
American
Males.
Which American Males will be a forever all-time favorite theme.
Oh my God! It was stripper music if there ever was any.
Oh,
it was what Val Venus would have rocked over in WWE if he had that.
Yeah, he would have. So, I'm gonna piggyback off of that, Pat G, because I think the NWO was beneficial for guys like the Giant.
Yep.
Okay, NWO was beneficial for really whatever contract X-Pac managed to get when he came back to WWE in '98.
Yeah.
Probably was helped out greatly by his drawing power in the NWO.
Oh, absolutely.
You had. I mean, if you think about that time period, some guys got an NWO rub. You're right. Some guys didn't really fare so well. But there were a lot of guys whose paychecks probably got better because they were part of the NWO.
Especially Vincent's. Vincent's paychecks through the roof. Stomps for days, man.
All right. So list. So I'm bringing up the members of the NWO.
Oh man.
Okay.
Where do we start?
If Dennis Rodman ain't on that list, I'm off.
If referee Nick Patrick is not in this list, I'm out.
So this is the all right. So the incarnation, NWO. Incarnation NWO July 7th, 1996 to April 27th, 1998. This was the original incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Go.
Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan. Ted DiBiase joined August 96. The Giant joined September of 96. NWO Sting, September of 96. Shortly after that. Then Vincent, Miss Elizabeth. The Nasty Boys were there for a week. Bischoff, Bagwell, Michael Wall Street, Big Bubba Rogers, Scott Norton, Masashiro Chono, Randy Savage, Muda, Tenzin, Conan, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, Louis Spicolli, Dusty Rhodes, Brian Adams, Scott Steiner, The Disciple, and Nick Patrick. That's the original. That's
29 guys.
Okay. So they break it up. NWO Hollywood, which was NWO Black and White, April 27th, 98 to January 4th, 99. Hogan, Bischoff, Disciple, Bret Hart, associate member, Brian Adams, Scott Steiner, Vincent, Giant, Scott Hall, Dusty Rhodes, Sting, NWO Sting, Bagwell, Norton, Rodman, Miss Elizabeth, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, Stevie Ray, Horace Hogan, who was the legitimate nephew of Hulk Hogan, Barry Windham, and then Mark Johnson, who was NWO referee.
Oh my God, I forgot Barry Windham was in the NWO.
Yep. Then you have the NWO Wolfpack, which is the same time period, which was Nash, Savage, Conan, Hennig, Rhodes, Elizabeth, Rick Rude, Luger, Sting, Scott Hall, Disco Inferno. Now this is where it starts getting ridiculously dumb. This is the incarnation NWO Elite after the finger poke of doom. Hogan, Nash, Hall, Bischoff, Bagwell, Steiner, Luger, Elizabeth, Disco Inferno, Conan, David Flair, Torrie Wilson, and Rick Steiner.
Wow.
Yep.
That's what we forgot.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you have the NWO Black and White, which is the NWO B team, which is lower card members who were never fully inducted into the faction.
Poor guys.
Stevie Ray, Giant, Kurt Hennig, Vincent, Scott Norton, Brian Adams, Horace Hogan. And then, of course, before it finally died, NWO 2000, which was Bret Hart, Jeff Jarrett, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Steiner, the Harris Brothers, Madeja, Tylene Buck, April Hunter, and Pamela Paulshock.
Yes, I remember because they would do those backstage scenes where Kevin Nash is getting fed grapes like a debauched Roman emperor. And Jeff Jarrett's just like, I'm going to hit someone in the head with this guitar, slap nuts.
Yeah. So it's the fact that you had so many different versions of the NWO, but a lot of the names were the same. Like, people complain that, that everybody was NWO. If you really look at that list, most of the players are the same outside of maybe 10 to 15 people.
Now, I'm gonna ask our guest this question. Do you think they should have just done a NWO Nitro and WCW Thunder? And do you think that would have actually helped the wrestling business more? Because it's something similar we saw in 2002 with the brand split with Raw and SmackDown.
I wouldn't think it would work after all, because the popularity mainly from the NWO was just too big. Just too big, and like that itself was its own entity. It was hard to control, just having its own aura. It was eventually had to succumb to Nitro and Thunder to feature both of them. Like, yeah, it was probably, when you break it down for the like however many groups members in the group there were for the NWO, they were featured a lot on TV. That's what we get to see. That's why we probably thought that, there were so many people like, who was also in the NWO? They were always featured a lot. That's where their paychecks would get up pretty high and everything. So yeah, it's an entity of its own that, quite frankly, really took over. That it was just too big for two shows. That it was featured on both shows, and as you can see, what was it, like 5-6 different times they split up, and you got Silver, you had the LWO and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's like, oh man, too convoluted.
You had different, and that's the thing, is the NWO was so influential that you had like you had different factions just creating themselves. Like you had the parody faction BWO and ECW. With Big Stevie Richards and Nova and the Blue Mimi, and then you had the Luchadors in WCW with the LWO, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, La Parka, and
Juventud, yeah.
And then of course, you had the black and white, red and black, the NW Wolfpack, which the NW Wolfpack theme is one of my favorites.
The NWO Wolfpack was a good storyline, I felt.
Yeah.
But man, Sting could have at least kept his face white and had red and black. Like, yeah.
Oh, so you're okay with Sting joining the Wolfpack?
No, actually, okay. This is as the Sting mark. As the Sting mark here. Fuck it. It's guaranteed. I'm going to talk about Finn Balor and Sting every podcast. No, because at that era, I felt that the character had spent a year and a half trying to fight the NWO. Why join the NWO? And I can remember watching that episode of Nitro, because he was tag team champion with the Giant. Giant went NWO white. Sting was offered to join. He also was offered to join Wolfpack. Lex Luger had joined the week previous.
Yeah.
And there was this push for WCW was going to try and make the overture. And then at the end of the episode, he takes off his coat and reveals the NWO Hollywood logo. Hulk was all happy. Scorpion Death Drop tears it. NWO Wolfpack. I really would have liked Sting to have stayed WCW. But for the storyline that they were trying to tell, it was the thought of the one guy we need to flip is Sting, and we flipped him. Once Sting went NWO, anyone could go NWO.
Yeah.
And there was the thought of, if you infiltrate, you can keep an eye on your enemy better. I did get that storyline. I think the best thing they did was when Sting left and took his sabbatical from October 98 until April of 99, giving him that break and then completely getting away from the NWO entirely was the best thing for him. But then again, there were a lot of members of the NWO that I was like, well, not a fan of that one. Bret Hart, I never felt needed to be NWO or even NWO adjacent. He was the guy screwed over by WWF and the evil Vince McMahon. Like, that was gold. They could have gone with that.
Yeah.
And what hurt Bret Hart and is the fact that, of course, you go back to the Montreal Screwjob and the way that happened, and it's unfortunate, and now bridges have been repaired, whatever, and that it's a moment in wrestling history that we'll all watch back and go and see different things and have different takes and everything. What hurt Bret Hart going to WCW is the death of Owen. Is because it's like Bret Hart left November 97, and it took them, I think, what, 6 months, like a handful of months before he actually debuted, because
he broke his hand on Vince's face the first week of November. He showed up the week before Starrcade, so mid-December. So a month and a half, almost 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
And when he showed up, it was, you had all that heat and everything, all that reaction from the screw job was over. It had died down. Had Bret, and I understand Bret broke his hand the night of Survivor Series 97. Had Bret walked out that next night on Nitro and just cut a promo and had his hand cast up and was like, listen, I'm here, I broke my hand, as you can see, and show on whatever. And at that time, neither company had any issues calling out the other one. So it wouldn't have mattered. Like, had he just come out and cut that promo and then been like, all right, I'm here to WCW. I understand you have the issue with the NWO. I'm here to fix that problem. And him aligning himself as like the true WCW guy, he's the answer for WCW versus the NWO, which featured a lot of guys that he had plenty of matches with and proved that he could beat. Outside of the big name of Hogan, Bret Hart could have had a hell of a run in WCW.
And Bret Hart versus Hogan could have been your Starrcade 98 match.
Yep. You could have built that up over from November and December. You would have had a 2-month build for that, and this actually goes back. He could have run through like your NWO, your Scott Hall, your Kevin Nash, even Conan 6, whatever, who like your main priors getting up to Hogan.
Yeah, but the whole thing back in the day from the 90s where you had Hogan and Bret, Hogan not wanting to give the belt off to Bret, and then that carried over onto WCW. There you go, and that carried over to WCW, and of course Hogan playing his political roles and stuff like that. He's not going to drop over to Bret Hart, even if it's the hottest thing coming with the whole freaking the Montreal Screwjob. You think Hogan's going to be going down like stooping that low for that? Like, yeah, it could have done numbers. It could have been great, but ultimately no.
Hogan didn't even want to drop the belt to Sting.
There you go.
I mean,
the only person that Hogan legitimately wanted to drop the belt to was Goldberg.
Horace Hogan. Oh, I got that. That was my second guess. In Goldberg.
God damn it, Horace.
What was your guess, Daniel?
Goldberg, but at the same token, I think he would have been okay with Paige too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think because Paige, but the thing is it would have. Paige getting the belt would have probably meant more had he beaten like Kevin Nash for it.
Well, that's something that we haven't talked about is the NWO made stars within the NWO. The NWO made stars outside of the NWO because Dallas Page was made because of his feud in '97 with the Macho Man.
Savage.
Yeah. And then, of course, leading into that, because Dallas Page has talked about how he's had close friendships. He had a very close friendship with Scott Hall because Scott Hall was the Diamond Stud at one point. Mm-hmm. And you had that association of him potentially joining the NWO. And then when he dropped Scott Hall with the Diamond Cutter, man was made.
That was a hot moment.
Like, because Dallas Page is like, he's got the NWO shirt on, and then all of a sudden Scott Hall turns and he just Diamond Cutter, and Kevin Nash.
And
he does the loopsie-doo over the top rope, man.
Over dramatic, sold it like a champ.
Oh my God. Kevin Nash would take a bump if he liked you, and he would take some ugly, fun bumps. That one being one of them. And, you had Six versus Rey Mysterio was a good fight at that time.
And honestly, you got to look at the feud that Six had with Ric Flair. It a man that was WCW personified, he increased the value that Six had in the ring because of he gave him the rub. Ric Flair gave Six the rub.
Yep.
And then of course, Kevin Nash out there. We mentioned Kevin Nash years ago with the lawn dart of Rey Mysterio. Kevin Nash helped make Rey Mysterio known as the Giant Killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it's the thing of there's so many moments in the NWO history that they made stars within the NWO. Because you have the Giant, who went on to have a very long career. The Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Six are now WWE Hall of Famers for their work from WWE and WCW, especially with the NWO. You have WWE doing an NWO week this week, showcasing those moments. It's the thing of. It's so crazy that the NWO it's been 25 years, but they're so influential in wrestling today. It's crazy because the thing is up until that point, the main like mob mentality type thing was the Horsemen. And the thing is, the Horsemen did it in a sense of, okay, you were in a one-on-one match with Arn Anderson or Ric Flair or Tully Blanchard and whatnot, and the other guy showed up and beat you down. The NWO was just like, no, it could be Wrestler X versus Wrestler Y in the ring, and just out of nowhere, boom, the faction hits, and they just start taking out everybody. Like, the NWO created a lot of that surprise mob attack. And case in point, look at what the Undisputed Era did over the last 2 years in NXT. A lot of what the Undisputed Era had and did could be traced back to being very NWO influenced. And then,
very true.
Of course, look at when they did the anniversary Raw between Barclays and Hammer and the ballroom and everything. And you had that moment in the ring, that moment in the ring with the Click and everything, like and Balor and Anderson and everything. Like, this is the thing is. The NWO was kind of influential in wrestling, but they were also influential outside of wrestling because you had this friendship that was long-standing and long-lasting that you now see in a lot of other different wrestlers. You have the friendships like Finn Balor, Gallows, and Anderson. AJ Styles and Gallows and Anderson and everything. Like, the NWO influenced inside of wrestling and outside of wrestling.
Their influence can still be seen today because, last year we did not have a traditional WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest moments, and Slowpoke, I think you'll agree with me, was the Firefly Funhouse match where John Cena was coming out in NWO. And that became a Funko Pop, a T-shirt, a meme. People were freaking out like, oh, is John Cena coming back heel now? It's like... Because he threw now an official
action figure.
Yeah, you got the action figure, yeah.
Yeah, it's like an NWO T-shirt got fans so worked up that we were getting a John Cena heel turn because you put on that shirt and shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, because that brand, that logo carries the aura of a heel. Anti-bad guy, whatever. It's cool to be a bad guy. How cool would it have been to see Cena as a heel? The fact that all of us know for sure the answer. influencing children, and like, he has like this marketing and stuff like that. It's going to look a bad image with the WWE itself. But what a way that would be something to catapult his status and others too, with him being, formation of the NWO. What a fantasy booking though, with the Firefly Hunt Funhouse, being able to like do a little nudge of a heel turn with Cena, put on the shirt. And that's why, you have the action figures, pop figures, all that kind of stuff. All because the sole name of the NWO, as you mentioned, carries that.
And the thing is you got to look back with the big name, and that's Hogan.
Yep.
And that's Hogan. And this is the thing, is even when Hogan turned heel and went New World Order and he became Hollywood Hogan, Hogan was still doing a lot of appearances and Make-A-Wishes, and yes, granted, it was in the NWO Hollywood Hogan attire gear, but at the end of the day, it was still Hulk Hogan. He was still giving back to the fans. He was still giving back to the fans and the kids and families of professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. Granted, yes, he still was he was wearing an NWO shirt. He had the Hollywood Hogan beard and pose and everything, but it was still at Hulk Hogan. A lot of people have said the reason that John Cena won't turn heel is because of all his outside stuff. This is where us wrestling fans like to go, suspension of disbelief. Yes, and if John Cena turned heel, yes, John Cena would be a heel on television, but that doesn't mean that John Cena would be a heel in real life, doing Make-A-Wish, doing charity events. He would still be John Cena.
Yeah,
yes, he may go there and he may be wearing the whatever attire he's rocking right now for that persona he's working as a heel, but at the end of the day, he's still John Cena.
At the end of the day, you've already mentioned that kayfabe is dead.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing. Yeah. I think that's where, and if John Cena does come back and John Cena does have another run in him to finish out his career,
right?
A heel faction run would be great. But going back to like what we said earlier, it would just be another, oh great, John Cena's here, multicolored neon shirt, whatever. He's gonna fight Roman Reigns. Acknowledge me, and that. I personally, I feel like John Cena needs. If John Cena came back, and when he came back for that hot minute and did the Doctor of Thugonomics, people lost their shit.
I cried.
Tears of joy. Tears of joy.
Yeah. Like people, like if John Cena comes back for a one more run, I would love to see him come back in that Thugonomics gimmick. As the Doctor of Thugonomics, because the way that Roman Reigns is going right now, if they really want John Cena versus, and I know they're trying to build to Reigns and The Rock and that, but The Rock's schedule, because he's got the movies and everything.
Yeah.
John Cena's done very soon with the movies and the TV shows.
Peacemaker wrapped up a week ago.
Yeah.
The TV show he was filming in Montreal, which is based on his Suicide Squad character. Mm-hmm. And I think Suicide Squad would be the only way that we'd be able, as wrestling fans, to see John Cena as a heel in the future.
Yep.
Because Peacemaker is not a good guy. Peacemaker is a murderer. He's a psychopath. And the one trailer that they played where he released it on his social media was like, look, kids, there's naughty language. Hand the phone to your parents and have them watch it first. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, he's talking about a beach covered in dicks. Okay. Like, this is the John Cena we need on TV.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like,
we could get it.
But do we really need it? I mean, you mentioned about, Patrick, that either Cena, Rock going to be paired with Roman Reigns. Either way, it's going to draw money. Roman is a staple of its own. you throw in Cena or Rock, it's already golden. So either way, you bring him as a heel or face.
Yeah,
Roman's a perfect bad guy. There's no need for him to change that to heel to heel.
Cena needs a little bit. If they are going to do Cena versus Reigns, I just think Cena needs a little bit of an edge to get that little bit of an edge to him.
Well, he always carries that edge, yeah.
Just
absolutely.
Because of the way that Roman Reigns has made this head of the table character his.
Right, yeah.
Unless they pull the swerve and they have John Cena versus Drew McIntyre, and that's how we get a heel John Cena. But
true.
kind of the way that they've been doing it is it will be interesting when live crowds are reintroduced.
Yes,
to determine how things are going to go.
Absolutely.
Because the fans hated Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, which was perfect. But if Drew McIntyre is wearing out his good guy welcome on Raw, and starts acting like a prima donna and starts demanding matches, all it would take is John Cena coming out being like, homie, you don't deserve a rematch. You've had 57 this year.
Yeah.
You know, and fans would go, he's right, he doesn't deserve it. I want John to make it to number 17 and 18 this year. But that's the allure of Big Match John. We hate you hate him when he's there, but when he leaves to go film a superhero movie, you're like, can you are you sure you can't make WrestleMania this year, John? Are you sure? Oh, he can't do it. What about next year? Okay, thanks.
Oh, when he came back with the Rise Above Hate, when he was doing that promo, that's when I on video apologized to him, because yes, I did hate him. You know what I mean? Like, I jumped the boat. You can't wrestle, all this kind of stuff. But now, growing up, a little older, a little wiser, you kind of understand his, what he's made for. He's made for, his demographic and being the head honcho of the company and stuff like that. So yeah, and then like his aura, almost like the Rock, Stone Cold of our era, like in the modern era now. Yep. This guy, he brings the big banks. You know what I mean? He makes the money bags come around. So like, of course, John Cena is a staple. And then now, yes, of course, when he leaves to Hollywood, we're begging him to come back. When he comes back, we love to boo him or cheer him. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the give and take of pro wrestling.
Yep.
But as we get close to wrapping up here, we are going to give the floor to our guests a little bit. Yeah, your guests. So for you personally, now that this is the first time you've ever been on the show,
I'm honored to be here, by the way. Thank you so much, you guys.
You're
welcome.
Welcome.
Been knocking out of the park.
What was the moment, that lightning bolt of moment that turned you into a pro wrestling fan?
Oh, that got me into pro wrestling?
Yes. What was the moment that was like, yo, this is cool, I'm a fan of this, that's this moment?
I'm always embarrassed to reveal this, because you want to say, oh, it was WrestleMania 2000, or like, was it with when Hogan dropped the leg drop with the NWO? It was on a Sunday Night Heat episode. It was on a Sunday Night Heat episode, and my mother had just changed it. I was 7 years old, by the way, born in 91. I was 7 years old. And
we're old as fuck, Pat G. I'm sorry.
When he said he was born in 91 and he was 7 years old, I'm like,
wait.
I was like, crap.
Take it easy. Here we go. I watched a lot of Nacho Libre, by the way. Take it easy. Anyways, that's my favorite movie, by the way. So Sunday Night Heat's going on. My mother flips the channels. A neighbor of mine ended up buying a knockoff wrestling ring with some knockoff wrestling figures. And I'm like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's wrestling. Cool. Let's play the figurines. So what do you do? What is this a turnbuckle? What is that? Well, do you you eat it? What do you do with it? You punch it? No, you jump off of it. Okay, whatever. It's like just playing along with my friend. Sure enough, my mother flips the channel to Sunday Night Heat. The first wrestler I see, and I mentioned him earlier in the show, Val Venus. He was the very first wrestler I've ever seen in WWF. Now, carrying the towel, hello, ladies, and just rocking the fans. Fans are cheering him on, and the ladies, he's going over, just showcasing them and stuff. And I was like, wow, I want to be that person when I grow up. And I don't know who he wrestled, but after that, I think it ended up being WrestleMania 2000. Like, there was at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim when it was still the Arrowhead Pond. There was a big old like hot air balloon, like programming the show.
Yeah.
And I was watching from the sky, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck is that? Okay. And then again, my mother flipping the channel. We just so happened to have illegal cable. Sorry, Adelphia Cable, or now known as Comcast or Xfinity, whatever you want to call it now. So we had WrestleMania 2000 playing, and I saw Kane. He was chokeslam or tombstoning that one.
Pete Rose.
What was his name? Pete Rose.
Pete Rose.
I was like, what is this guy, the mask, doing to this poor old man? What did he do? I didn't know the whole baseball lore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ever since then, boom. I've grown to love wrestling ever since, and I've been through the ups and downs. When it was the PG era, 2009, 2010, that was a very hard time to be a wrestling fan. And then at the same time, Hogan had just joined TNA. So that was even harder. Like, oh, fuck, okay, like, where am I supposed to go venture out? And then sure enough, the long haul, now we have both WWE. We have many different programs now, WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, New Japan. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. Great time.
The fact that his moments were Val Venus and Kane tombstoning Pete Rose is amazing because you don't get stuff like that. That's real. Like, that's legitimately real. Like you get people like, oh, Rock Hogan at WrestleMania 18 or Hogan.
One of the things I really hate when people be like, hey, so what was the guys with the tables? Oh, you mean the Dudley boys? Yeah, the Dudley brothers. They used to do the D3. No, it's a 3D. It's like they don't get the lore. Like how I just gave you the details with Val Venus and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like no, that's a real moment for you though. That's that's legit. So that's legit, and it's amazing to hear like legit real moments because like I said, I've said I have this official unofficial beef with these wrestling fans on TikTok that have like massive followings, and like last year there was a bunch of them videos like what was the moment that got you to be a wrestling fan, and these people are talking about like stuff that was like after the just random moment, like random big time moments in the Attitude Era. I'm going, okay, all right, that's fine, but like it's like that's a moment that everybody knows, so
yeah
there's no like, and that's been played over by 1,600 times
in loop. Yes,
like it's nothing that you can be like, okay, random, like most fact thing, like, and it was just like, come on.
I know Daniel's baffled. He's like, what? Val Venus? What?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If we're gonna talk about people that'll never be in the Hall of Fame. Trying to put a porn star character in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Good luck, pal.
You can put him as the right to censor guy. Come on now. He was actually, he was good.
Don't give me that shit. We all know. Saving Ryan.
Come on, the good father. The good father.
Okay.
Come on now.
Okay, I'll say this. If there comes a day that Sean Morley ever gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, it will probably be in the same light as the Godfather, a man that had a very popular character, but had other characters in his career that helped him define a career. Because you have the right to censor, you have him as himself.
He's a pimp. If you can get a pimp into the Hall of Fame, what's porn star? You know what I mean? Like, he's not even a real porn star. You know what I mean? It's like, you can get him in there, squeeze him in there. That's fine, totally fine. Poor Val.
Listen. If Val Venus ever gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, I want Funaki as the inductor.
I want Funaki to be recognized as the greatest cruiserweight champion ever. Let's put that right now. Greatest cruiserweight champion of all time. Not Kung Funaki. Funaki, cruiserweight champion of all time. Anyways, yes, Val Venus. I would love to see him in the Hall of Fame one day.
Hell, speaking of Funaki, I feel like Funaki could be in the Hall of Fame at some point too.
He needs to be. That man has paid his dues with Kai and Tai. Come on now. Even though it's kind of like a racist thing back in the day in the Attitude Era. But let's not talk about that. Funaki, number one announcer.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Peacock will edit it out.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. He's the number one announcer. Come on
absolutely. Now. All right. At this time, we're going to give our guest the floor to cut his own little promote himself, all the things about him, and where you can find him. The floor is yours, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Slowpoke Felitos. I am a part-time streamer, part-time alcoholic, a seasonal Catholic, and an official Lego Builder license holder. I am a big fan of professional wrestling all my life, and the fact that I can watch currently now All Elite Wrestling, pre-COVID, by the way, I was watching All Elite Wrestling at bars and not feeling embarrassed nor cringy, like, hey, asking the bartender, hey, can you switch the channel to TNT? Oh, yeah, sure. And having one or two people like come after me like, hey, what is this, WWE? Nah, it's AEW, dude. This is the real stuff. This is where the big boys play. Like, oh, isn't that WCW? No. This is AEW, All Elite Wrestling. So currently right now on Twitch, we are on the road to 500 followers. We're about 474. I have actually unlocked I implemented a foot cam. So if you guys are also wrestling fanatics, if you guys are foot fetish people, I have that for you guys for hopefully sooner down the road we can have it unlocked. But never find that. OnlyFans coming up pretty soon. OnlyFeed's coming up pretty soon. We are currently launching the merchandise for the House of Slowpokes, which is basically my emote, the Let's Go emote. It's finally coming out. I'm announcing it tonight. And currently, Patrick, this is the first time I'm actually announcing this, so this is a world premiere. So thank you for having me on this floor. Yeah, exactly. Ooh, yeah, take it, brother. Dan, you, sir, are an encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge that the whole thing with Tori Wilson, like, I guess that baffled me with the whole thing about her being in the NWO. I was just like, okay, cool. I love this guy. This guy's already on my, like, wrestling fan, dude. I want to go that.
Look, let's be honest. You know, I had the option of doing homework when I was in school and preparing my life for college after high school, or doing pro wrestling, studying every Monday and Wednesday and Thursday night and Sunday. I was just, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry I was a fuck up. Let's just be honest. But on a podcast, it's all about wrestling.
Yeah,
it paid off. So
it pays off. Yes, it pays off.
Thank you, Slowpoke, for being with us, man. It was fun getting to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, Patrick, once again, too, man, like, just honored to be here. The fact that, like, you yourself, you guys having a platform for wrestling and wrestling, like, wrestling nerds like myself to actually come to listen, to view, to be in here, and to basically have it not, like, fizzle out, because wrestling, it's a beautiful time to be alive. It's a beautiful time to be a wrestling fan. You have all these different programs to tune in, all these stuff and knowledge to talk about wrestling drama, whether it's whatever it is with contracts disputes or whatnot. It's like there's never ending storytelling with wrestling. So thank you guys for keeping it alive.
So, all right, before we wrap up here, in 2 weeks, 14 days, July 22nd, we will be back here on Twitch with another Twitch special. We will be joined by a man that a lot of people know, especially if you're on TikTok. You've seen him on WWE The Bump. He is the Professor Nick Harrison. He is a big time. He's gotten a lot of things for retweets from WWE superstars. He's been on WWE The Bump. He's a personality in TikTok. His videos are hilarious. We are going to be sitting down with him and interviewing him in 2 weeks when we come back to the Twitch channel. Check out the socials, and of course, you will get the notifications of those. The audio edition of this show will be up in a couple of days. You'll check out the socials again. Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast on Twitter. TBTR Podcast is the Twitter. You can check us out on Facebook, Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast. There, we're coming up to more social media. I'm going to start building Instagram account and start releasing content there. Trying to build it up because we want to be different than every other wrestling podcast out there. We just don't want to recap shows for you or moments. Mm-hmm. We want to give you opinions and stories and memories. That's what we want to do here. Thank you to Slowpoke for joining us. And as we close out the show, we're going to too-sweet it to everybody. Dan,
this episode was just...
I'm going to leave this to you to close it out because you can do this the right way.
All right. Well, let me tell you something, brother. When you come to the TTRP with Slowpoke and you end the podcast, it's always just too sweet.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.